This week's episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast is driven by Cornerstone Gundog Academy. Cornerstone is the world's most comprehensive online Gundog training resource with over 160 instructional videos to include everything that you need to take a 7-week-old puppy to a finished Gundog. Visit cornerstonegundogacademy.com to sign up for their free preview module and begin your training journey today. Cornerstone Gundog Academy, the world's most advanced Gundog training resource on the web. You are listening to the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, episode 128. This week on the show, we're approaching a little bit of a different topic. Have you ever thought about starting your own business in the outdoor industry? Well, this week we're getting into everything entrepreneurship. All right, welcome to the 128th episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Palm. This week we are brought to you by Lifetime Decoys. Their patent-pending designs using PVC-coated steel cable to prevent rust and corrosion, allow virtually zero line memory, while providing UV resistance, incredible strength, and durability. Unlike monofilament, steel cable won't coil up and tangle with other lines because of excess memory. Their swivels and clips are made with high-quality stainless steel and aluminum ferrules that are hydraulically pressed, providing unsuppressed strength. These materials combine to form the strongest, longest-lasting, and most tangle-free decoy rigging equipment on the market today, and they're the only manufacturer who offers a 3-year warranty as well as a money-back satisfaction guarantee. Welcome to this week's show. If you're new, you can head over to hpoutdoors.com, check out all of our past episodes over there, find a bunch of great content on the site. You can also find our show on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, basically anywhere where you can find quality podcast content, you can find our show. If you're on social media, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you're a Facebook user, head over to our Facebook listeners group, join in, talk with a bunch of like-minded hunters, and my co-host Dan Harushka. Dan, what's up, man?
It's time for just the tip of the episode. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. This one's titled Sneaky Squirrels. Okay. The Franklin's ground squirrel can be a predator of duck eggs. And unlike larger predators, which destroy an entire clutch at once, and when they do that, they enable the hen to re-nest, these rodents steal eggs one at a time over a period of several days. And one study in Manitoba found that ground squirrels destroyed 19, that's a 1 and a 9, 19% of the duck nests in the area.
Wow, that's pretty significant. Not a tip, but definitely significant.
Still not tip. Here's your tip of the week. If you have 3 kids that want to wrestle every night, you might want to look into a mouth guard, because I took a knee to the chin last night from my oldest, Kelly, and I got holes in the side of my tongue, so now I feel like I can't even talk right. And yeah, it's pretty bothersome, but you might want to invest in a mouthpiece, because you don't know where those legs and arms and knees are coming from. But yeah, she clocked me pretty good. It was game over. Wow. I said, I'm done. It's over.
Yeah.
And she started crying.
Oh man, you guys, between your injuries and your emergency room trips, I tell you, it's pretty crazy over there in your household. But
yeah,
before we get too much further down the road, I do want to take a minute just to thank Kennels. They're engineered for your dog, designed for travel, and built for your peace of mind. The G1 Kennel has set a new industry standard and put Gunner Kennels in a category all its own. They were started to protect your pet, and it continues to be at the center of everything they do. Gunner Kennels are dedicated to building the best and safest pet travel crate on the market, because man's best friend deserves man's best kennel. Check out their G1 series of kennels and accessories at gunnerkennels.com. Also, thank you to Eukanuba. Out in the field, how you've prepared determines how you perform. With balanced fat and protein to support peak condition, Eukanuba premium dog food enhances strength, energy, and endurance. So when the pavement ends and the truck doors swing open, you and your dogs are ready for anything. Strong, focused, ready for anything. That's a Eukanuba dog. Again, thank you to the supporters of this week's episode, and we encourage you guys to, as always, support the companies that support our show. Okay, Dan, so there's not a whole lot going on as far as waterfowl lifestyle for me right now. I'm firmly in the swing of baseball season starting with my son, and obviously my daughter, 3 months old, keeping us quite busy there. You got any waterfowl specific stuff going on in your neck of the woods?
No, still seeing a lot of reverse migration, a lot of ducks around, a lot of geese, paired up and flying around everywhere. But going back to the baseball thing, do you use any like apps for as a coach to keep parents involved in anything?
Yeah, so our league actually has they have apps that they use through the league that all the teams get. So your roster's in there and it has your schedule and you can message and stuff with them. So I find that effective. Some parents use it. Some teams, I've always required my teams to use it in the past. I'm assistant coaching this spring, and our head coach has not enforced that. So like about 7 or 9 out of the 12 we have are on there. So he prefers to just do it via email, like on an email group. I always liked the app because it allowed more of like chat, quicker responses and stuff. But I'm definitely a fan of an app to manage your team and make communication easier. I thought you were asking for like drills and that kind of stuff, or like score booking or that kind of stuff, which I was going to say.
Well,
at T-ball, that's a little aggressive.
Yeah. So now as a T-ball coach, they recommended Band, B-A-N-D, the app. And like you said, there's a calendar in there. It shows like games and where they're at and times, everything. You can just make a big group chat and then everyone can see. Yeah. Instead of doing like the group message and having to scroll all the way back through everything.
Right.
It's nice.
I never heard of that app, but the concept is the same. And it's nice because parents, a lot of them have the same question. So if they see one person ask it and you address it, it'll make it easier. The one thing I will also encourage you to do, if you're going to do like post-game snack and that kind of thing, definitely use Sign Up Genius for that. Makes it super easy to just fill it out and make a form, and then you can send it to the parents and they can all sign up for times. So
Sign Up Genius.
Yep. Super easy. And it's free. So it's all good.
Now I know.
Yeah. And I wish that was like a business that I would have thought of, because it's super helpful and everyone around here uses it. And it's just super easy. But I don't know anything about software. I know a little bit more about duck hunting than I do software. Not significant amounts, but a little bit. And that's how we ended up with the podcast. But I think this week's episode, we've decided to dive into the idea of entrepreneurship within the outdoor industry. And I know that you and I have fielded many questions and have had discussions with many people who have either ideas or things that they wanted to do that they felt could turn into a business, being outdoor related and specifically waterfowl. So we thought, there's probably many of our listeners out here that would either have an idea to do something that could turn into a business, or would love the opportunity or dream about having a business or working day to day in the outdoor industry. So we thought it could be a good topic to kind of chew on here as we're in the off season. And, that's kind of when you have more time to sort of think through ideas and kind of, put together plans and things like that. So maybe instead of planning hunts and things this year, there's people out there that are planning a business, and maybe this episode will help them out with that a little bit.
Yeah. Like you said, we get a lot of questions, and, we figured that we'd have an episode on it, and someone that is grown tremendously the last couple years is our guest for today.
Yeah, we thought, who could we bring on the show that could speak to this aspect of entrepreneurship? And we thought, who better than our friend Barton Ramsey of Southern Oak Kennels and Cornerstone Gundog Academy, and I don't know, there may be more that I don't know about.
Bad grammar.
Bad grammar, yeah, involved with that as well. So, as always, welcome our good friend to the show, Barton Ramsey. Hey, Barton, how's it going, man?
It's going great. Going great. How about you guys?
We're doing awesome, man. I appreciate you taking the time again to join the show and talk a little bit about entrepreneurship within the outdoor industry. When this idea came up, we certainly thought that you would be a more than qualified candidate to speak to this topic. So for those who somehow have missed your multiple cameos on the show and your company's support of our program, obviously you are involved with Southern Oak Kennels and Cornerstone Gundog Academy. So maybe go ahead and just sort of give us an idea as to what your role is and what your involvement is with both of those companies before we get too much more into the discussion. Yeah,
sure. So Southern Oak Kennels is really my sort of baby, my first child when it comes to businesses. And it's basically me taking a hobby, dog training, and then breeding a litter or two a year and allowing that hobby to take over my life, and then figuring out how to take back over the thing that had taken over my life and turn it into something slightly successful. So that's Southern Oak is mine, and it's a Gundog kennel that imports, breeds, and trains British Labrador retrievers, and has extended out to multiple locations that are all managed, run, and in some ways owned by different people, but the whole umbrella is owned by me. And then out of somewhat necessity, I was answering a lot of questions about training. I'd send a litter of puppies home, and you could set a timer to the day when people would start asking me questions, like when teeth start falling out. Hey man, my dog did this. Or when they reach 6 months and kind of become a jerk, hey, my dog quit listening to me today. And I'd answer the same questions over and over all the way through that dog's training. And I was like, boy, it'd be nice if I had a way to give them something and everyone asked the same thing. Is there a book or a DVD? And I remember getting those questions and thinking to myself, who reads books and who has a DVD player? The only DVD player I have is in my wife's Yukon. And so, partnered up with Keith Parvin and Josh Parvin. They had an idea to build a retriever website, and I had a few ideas and brought in our friends at Rockhouse Motion, and we collaborated. So with Cornerstone Gundog Academy, it's really a four-way partnership between Josh, Keith, Rockhouse, and myself. So we're all the founders and owners of Cornerstone. And so it's a little different than Southern Oak, because Southern Oak, I'm responsible ultimately for everything. And Cornerstone, I kind of have my lane that I stay in, which is helpful. So it doesn't take over my whole life the way that Southern Oak did in the first few years.
Before we brought you in, we kind of explained, we're talking kind of guiding this towards people that want to start their own business or somehow want to be involved in the outdoor industry. So, we're going to be asking you questions and talking about different things. But when you decided to do Southern Oak Kennels and the whole business process of it, did you have a mentor? If you did, were you asking them questions constantly? How did that go about?
Yes. So inadvertently, I did. My wife, I had a Springer Spaniel. A buddy invited me duck. This is like the super quick version. A buddy invited me duck hunting for the very first time. I didn't grow up hunting at all. I wasn't your target hunting guy at all. I was, wearing skinny jeans and long hair and, tattoos. And this bro from my church was like, hey, you want to go duck hunting? And I was like, that sounds really fun. So I went, and there was a guy who had a dog from a kennel that I will not name, and the dog was awful. And I was like, my dog could do this. So I go home. I took two of the ducks home. They were, I think, ringnecks, both hens. So really prized possession ducks there. And I tossed them out a few times, and my dog retrieved them. And she was steady to literally throwing a Frisbee. And I didn't know anything about training a waterfowl dog. And I took her on my next hunt, and we killed a bunch of hooded mergansers, me and a bunch of people at this catfish pond, which is super lame to even mention. But my dog picked all of them up. And I was like, this is super cool. So I was kind of hooked. My wife buys me another Springer Spaniel for Christmas. I get to a point where I don't know how to train this one. And I found a guy down the road about an hour from my house and just was like, how much does it cost? I didn't have money to afford it, but I was like, let me just do 3 months. And, and he was cool with it. And I went down, and he and I just he had a son my age who moved to Texas, where they're originally from. And I don't want to say replaced his son, but I sort of filled that role for a little bit, because I would go help him And in order to get the training for my dog, I would volunteer to like help shoot birds or throw dummies or, do obedience with dogs or whatever it was. And that guy just sort of took me under his wing. His name is Mark Harefield. He owns South Haven Kennels. He's moved back to Houston and is basically retired now. But he is like a Springer Spaniel guru. He has over 50 Spaniel field champions to his name since the 1980s, which is like a record. And then he also did British Labradors, and that's how I came to know labs. And my first few labs all came from him. So yeah, he mentored me and definitely guided me along and like, hey, I noticed you did this. Don't do that. Or, hey, have you thought about, this type of insurance or, what about if this happens, or show me the ropes as far as talking and finding dogs from the United Kingdom, all of that. He was super gracious. And I think he knew eventually he was kind of stepping away from it, especially the Labrador thing. So he just sort of helped me get started. And it was great. Necessary, I would say.
Yeah, it always is helpful in things, in life, if you have someone that you can kind of lean on and help guide the way. And I'm sort of curious because I think a lot of people throughout their life kind of come up with ideas, and a lot of them are great ideas, but a lot of them tend to just kind of die on the vine because we all are sort of have our lives and we're all kind of going along in one direction. And, somewhere in the back of your mind, you've got this idea where it's like, man, it would be really cool if I could do this or whatever. When did the gear, like the switch change for you where it was like, man, it'd be really cool if I could do this, to I'm going to do this and I'm going to figure out how to make that work? And was there like a moment in time where that happened, or was it like a slow progression where it was like, kind of forced yourself to like, well, hey, I need to start doing this more because it's, having success? Or was it more of that, like one time, like, I'm just going to do it and I'm going to figure out a way to make it work?
Yeah, there were a couple moments. It grew out of just sort of a mentality of like, if you're going to do something, kind of go big, go home sort of thing. And I just kept on, doing more and more and more and more until you could tell it was a big stress on my family, especially my wife. We were a young family, just started having children. I was working full time. Actually, I was working as a student pastor, then a teaching / discipleship pastor in the Southern Baptist world, which would probably surprise several listeners out there. And it was just taking up. If I was at one job, I was busy dealing with fires and issues, or just thinking about the other job. If I was out training dogs, I was dealing with phone calls and issues from the church job, and vice versa. And I was like, man, something's got to change here. And then as it grew, there were a few key people that kind of came into some came into, some went out of, some stayed in my life, who were encouraging to me and would kind of see what was going on and would say things to me that really blew my mind. Like they were like, hey man, you're really doing it here with this. Like you really got something special with Southern Oak, and I think you should like give it everything. Like I think you can really make it. And I would hear that and be like, yeah, whatever, this is a hobby, this is just something something I made up, and I only gave it a name because I needed to, have a way to tell the bank why I was getting these little checks, whatever it was. So, and those were, Aaron Hitchens was a huge part of that. Just as a friend, I started Southern Oak part-time when he first transitioned over to Rock House. And so we sort of stayed friends through that, and he was a huge encouragement to me. A guy who's in the group named Brady Davis. Brady became a very close friend of mine, and he strongly encouraged me. I remember one specific phone call with Brady where he was very much like, hey, you really can do this, and I think you should. And it really impacted me. And then just waiting for my wife to say, hey, if we're gonna do this, I'm all in. I'm in full support, because she's mom of the kids, and she didn't sign up to be the wife of an entrepreneur. I didn't start any businesses. I didn't have any plans on doing that at all. And so it wasn't fair to ask her to, jump in on this journey with me without, her having some buy-in to it. So when she finally kind of saw, hey, this could be good for our family and this could be a great route, and she was all in, then I really went for it. So timeline speaking, that would have been fall of 2016. So January 1 of 2017, I was officially unemployed from everyone else other than my own company. And that was quite scary.
I was going to say, terrifying is the word that comes to my mind.
Oh, so there's not a paycheck coming? No matter what, I got to go make it. But yeah, it was, so there were a lot of little moments and people that were pushing me and encouraging me along the way. And then still other people that were like, hey, be careful, be careful what you want to do. Don't rush it and that sort of stuff from both sides.
And I wanted, so you're going through that whole process. You start, selling a couple dogs, and I think one of the biggest apprehensions that people have is the whole money issue. And I'm not looking for specific numbers from you or anything like that, but when we have like Quack Rack on and 737, those guys are still working their full-time jobs and running their businesses, after work. So when, for you, were you fully replacing your income with Southern Oak Kennels before you made that jump, or was it like 75%? I just feel like that's a question that a lot of people have.
It's a valid question. I think it's a question that a lot of people, I'm glad you asked it, because I think it's a question that a lot of people who are kind of wanting to go for it, whatever it is, I think that it's a question they have and are sometimes scared to ask. And yeah, and there's definitely not like an answer, because it depends on everything. So if I had been 22, unmarried, no kids, then yeah, I'm just gonna go for it. I can live at my dad's house for a little while. You can make some different decisions. I'm instead, at that point, 26, 27, 28, married, 2, 3 kids, then 4 kids. So there's a lot of responsibility there. I will say what wound up, Southern Oak Kennels was honestly started because I needed to supplement my income so that my wife could stay home and so that we could save money for an adoption that was going to be very expensive, to be honest. That's why I started training dogs for money. People were asking me to do it before that, and I was like, no. And then I was like, well, I guess I could make a little extra income, and that was the idea. So I had a few dogs and client dogs, and then I realized, shoot, it would be a lot easier to train like dogs that were bred like my dog than it would be to train like 2 nice dogs and then one, dog someone got from the flea market. And so over time, the income from the startup grew. And when it became time for me to step out to just Southern Oak Kennels, my income was basically matching what it had been at my full-time job. That's honestly one thing that made me really think about it. I was like, I was doing my taxes, and I was like, shoot, number one, I need to find these write-offs. Number two, the government does not make it easy for entrepreneurs. It's with small businesses to make any money, because they want almost all of it. But I was doing taxes, and I was like, man, I made as much as I did, my full-time gig, and I never really thought that would be the case. And that was sort of eye-opening. And I think it's different for everyone, like I said. And there are people who work for me that have a full-time gig that's really great, and they train dogs at our outposts as a hobby. And it's like a small business for them. They deal with their own clients that come through Southern Oak. They contact with them weekly and train for us and have their own kennel location of their house and all that. But they're not going to quit their full-time job, because it would just be a poor decision for them to do that. And then we have others who are walking toward doing just that, So anyway, yeah, it's I think it's different for everyone, but I definitely had I had set my own goals and said, if we can get to this, then I'm willing to do it. And if not, then it's not worth it for the risk.
Yeah. I think something that you started to hit on there, as far as like how it's different for everybody. And some people can do it full time and others can't. I think that tends to, I'm sure that is true everywhere to an extent, but I feel like that is a little bit of a nuance with our, the industry that we're discussing here. And I do want to deep dive into that here in a minute. But before we do, when you get back to that, like that income piece of it, and that massive fear of like just stepping off the ledge and being like, okay, it's on me now kind of thing. How important or how did you prepare yourself for the potential of like what happens if this doesn't work? I mean, everyone. I mean, I would venture a guess that if you were going to start your own business and go out on your own and 100% be dependent on yourself, you better have the confidence to do it, right? I mean, you better have the belief and the skill and the, a reasonable expectation of success. However, things happen, and
Sure.
things potentially out of your control so I guess, how did you kind of like work through that process in your brain and kind of into that initial period? And did you take the time to sort of really game out, like, what am I going to do if this happens? Or what am I going to do if that happens?
Yeah, man. So if I'm a person who probably has, if I err on one side, I would definitely err on the side of having too much confidence, in all forms, which has gotten me hurt often, especially physically as a child. But when I had kids, wife, people looking at me, this social media kind of name that had started. And so, yeah, there were definitely nights I would lay down and I'd be like, oh, what if it doesn't work? And I had some things going for me. I had, an investor who was willing to invest endlessly in my kennel, even if it meant he was never paid back. And that's my dad. And I'm definitely not ashamed of that. I could have gone to the bank and gotten like a small business startup loan and all that stuff. My dad, he's made, a great living, and he's an entrepreneur. He owns his own small business anyway. He really took over the family business and grew it. And, he was looking at what I was doing and like, hey, I see this dream that you have. I see that you're really doing it, and I want to support it fully. And so I knew at the end of the day, if I really got myself in a bind, I had a guy who would back me, who would help me, even if it meant moving my family into his house, which would be like, last option. But I did look at the numbers. I looked at what we were doing. I looked at it wasn't always that way. Our first few litters, I remember like calling other kennels that are now my competitors and like trying to sell them my puppies for half price, because I just couldn't even sell them. I didn't have anyone calling. I had a litter of 9 pups born, and I was like devastated. I was like, I really wish this were 6 because I can't sell 9.
That's hilarious. As you have waiting lists till like 2025,
8 to 10. Yeah. But, there were definitely those times. And there were times where, I didn't have people call and put deposits down for a while. And, it grew incrementally. But for me, it was just, I tend to be, so I was the guy sitting in church leadership meetings as an elder and staff member at our church when we're passing the budget, looking at this budget that's massively bigger than the previous year, saying, yeah, we can do this. Like, we got it, like we're growing. We're like, it will take care of itself, and there's like definitely a faith element to that. Faith in God, and then faith in ability and in growth and in, those sort of things, positive, action and result. So when it came to this, I definitely had like, rose colored lenses on for a lot of it, but I was also apprehensive a few times, and anxious, that things, and it was the same way with Cornerstone too, sitting out and spending 2 like full days, sun up to sundown, recording these dog training videos and going home and being like, man, I really hope one day, like, I make $1 from this. Like, I hope someone believes in this, cause I'm giving it like a lot of time and attention and energy. And so, yeah, there were some fearful periods. And like I said, I didn't go out on a massive risk cause we were making money, and I did have deposits out to a certain amount of time. But yeah, there was some thought there of, what's gonna happen. And, again, it's a joke now, and it's all, it's social media's kind of made it a joke, but there's definitely a mentality of, hey, you know what? I see what's right ahead of me, and I'm just going to send it. And I grew up, riding motocross, racing sport bikes, and like that was the mentality. Like, oh yeah, it looks dangerous, I'm just going to send it. And of course, when you have kids, you got to pause for a second and say, okay, if I send this, what's going to happen? But I still have that, like, you don't like stand on the diving board wondering how cold the water is. You just freaking jump. It is what it is. So I think I think that's similar between me and a lot of people doing what I do. And look, I have friends, like some of my best friends who work in fields like banking. And they're always like, what are you doing? Like, why did you do that? Why did you buy that? Why, they operate from a very conservative mindset. And I need those people in my life sometimes to reel me in. But, they're not going to be the ones starting up a company. They're going to be the ones keeping guys like me in check, and sort of anchoring us to reality sometimes. So yeah.
So I want to, you said that you went full time in 2016. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, really it was January 1 of 17 officially, but realistically it was about October of 16.
Okay. So August 2018 was our 4-year anniversary. And I think you were our 8th episode as Southern Oak Kennels. So that was back in 2014, maybe 2015. And where I'm getting with this whole thing, that is, 2.5, 3 years of hard work. And I think that a lot of people, when they try to become an entrepreneur and start their own business, I think that's where a lot of people fall off. They don't understand the grind, and maybe just speak to that a little bit. Maybe, the business plan that you had or goals that you had set throughout those years to where you could be full-time at this.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people want to just like jump in and go full-time.
Right. Well, this is
just want an overnight success story.
Instant gratification world, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I get a lot of those questions, and I can tell people are like, what is the quickest way to do what you're doing? And I'm like, that's not the right question. I didn't even want to do what I'm doing. I didn't like sit down and decide to do this. So, for those, there's a lot of grinding it out. And I tell people all the time, like, don't quit your day job. I was in a very fortunate position to have a job that provided me with freedom to do a startup, and, if you want to quit your job and just go big and go all in and all that, then, I don't know, you could do it, but,
I think there's a lot of business, even business podcasts that promote that, and I don't think that's the best idea. To just stop everything, go to like even like Tim Ferriss's 3-day work week or whatever he has. Like, some of that stuff is not for everybody. Like, it's just not. It's not a possibility. And
yeah, some of it's honestly like fairy tale land.
Right.
And you hear that when you listen to like Gary Vaynerchuk and him do his question and answer, and people will have like, this really like, hey, I want to dive all into this, and here's what I want to do, and he'll like immediately like, throat punch them back to reality, and talk about how much he's worked and all that stuff. So yeah, I would, I agree with that.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that that I've read, people start a lot of businesses on the side that end up becoming full-time, kind of like what you've described. And it's basically, the time that you should probably consider that move is when the time that you're spending at work, your day job, is significantly taking away your ability to grow and earn money in your side business. So like, if you are turning away income generating opportunities because you have to be at your other job, like, that is probably the time you can consider, hey, is this the right time, and things like that, because there's a lot that goes into that decision. And I mean, even at that point, I think a lot of these guys that are in business and big business and are investors and things like that, they can handle a couple months swing of like of downturn or like loss in revenue because a lot of these guys are they're at the stage of their life where they're looking long term. They're in for the long game. I'm in to pay my mortgage next month, right? And
Yep.
make sure that like if
Yep.
my kid has to go to the doctor, I can pay for that. So that's the reality of what we see, and that's the reality of what I feel when I interview, and Dan and I interview these companies and these guys that are in the outdoor space. You know, you get the impression because you see these shows and Shark Tanks of the world and things like that, where they turn into these huge, massive revenue generating companies and hire all these people and all this, that, and the other. I mean, you'd be shocked to know how small some of these companies that we hold up in high esteem and see in the catalogs and buy their equipment and their gear all the time. You know, it seems shocking at times how small they are and how many people are really keeping the lights on there. And it's, you know, if you think you're going to start an entrepreneur, you know, your own business and just do sales or whatever, you're wrong, because you're going to do logistics and sales and customer service and all that stuff, because, you know, half the time it's just a handful of people that are really making these shows run. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely this moment, you know, like when you're a kid or when you're a teenager and you kind of realize like your parents aren't perfect, you know, there's a similar moment when you're in this industry and you like hang out with quote unquote bigwigs, you know, people that I think still are really awesome, people that have done big things in the industry, and you realize like, oh man, this is still like operating out of your garage, you know, like
right.
there's definitely those moments where you're like, man, this is different than I imagined it. And we're certainly in a different type of, I don't know, industry. I mean, it's not like starting a real estate company, you know, I mean, the outdoor industry it's small, it's limited. There are some awesome opportunities to do things if you can find something new or a new way to do something, to innovate, but it's pretty small. I actually was on the phone with a guy today, and we were talking about just, you know, people who are literally out there just to you know, seeking accolade, you know, they want fame. And I was like, man, if like the best thing you get is the highest amount of fame in the hunting industry, you've really not achieved anything. Like no one else in the world knows or cares. You know, it's just not a huge thing in this industry. So yeah, I think people will see like someone who owns a decoy company or whatever, you know, whatever company it might be, and think, golly, that must be awesome. That must be the life, you know, and they don't realize, you know, those people may have had to sacrifice several paychecks to keep the lights on or to pay employees, or, you know, just the way this industry is. It's not what a lot of people I think would imagine it to be when you get out there and do it.
So Barton, let me ask you, and you know, we touch on it quite often about the goods and the bads of social media. Maybe talk a little bit about how much your social media has affected your business, and maybe some do's and don'ts of how to present yourself on those channels.
Yeah, it's affected mine significantly. This is probably one of the things I enjoy talking about most, because it's a natural language for me. So there's a awkwardness when like your parents, our age, your parents, you know, get on Facebook and like do things, and you're like, golly, you're just awkward, you know, for the most part, not all of them, but most of them. And when your grandparents get on, you know, my grandma, she's like sweet as can be, and she gets on Facebook and like she'll leave a comment and like sign it with her name. You know, like I can't see who it is that left the comment. And I grew up on social media. I don't know about you guys, but I got like an Acer computer when I was in like the 5th grade. I'm about to be 32. I was born in 1987. So I had dial-up network. My parents got me my own landline, my sister and I had to kick her off the phone with her boyfriend so I could get on the internet, download, you know, albums off of Napster. And it would take all night to download and get on.
I still feel that pain.
Yeah, you know, and then get on Yahoo Instant Messenger. You'd hear the knock when your friends got on, update your status, and then AIM, and then MSN, and then like the whole progression of Zanga pages, LiveJournal, you know, then Friendster, then MySpace, which was huge for my band I played in and myself, and then Facebook, and then Instagram, and then Snapchat, which I use, but I don't really like. I mean, our generation, like, we were there when those things came out. So, you know, like my kids, I remember going to my grandparents' house and my daughter was like 3 and she walked up to my grandma's TV, which was low to the ground, and started swiping it like a big screen TV. We were all like, what is she doing? And she thought it was supposed to swipe like an iPhone. And I was like, my kid's never going to know, like, not touchscreen, you know, like everything should be touchscreen to her. And for us, it's just social media. So when I started Southern Oak Kennels, or when I became part of starting Cornerstone Gundog Academy, it was never like, oh, I got to figure this social media thing out. It was like, oh, yeah, well, the natural thing to do, like before I have an actual LLC or a bank account, is to have a Facebook page and an Instagram. Like, it's just what you do. And so it's been a huge part. I think a lot of people will say things like, you guys crush it on social media. Well, like in terms of like the real world and other businesses outside of the industry, we just probably do a little below average on social media. It's just in the outdoor industry, there are not a lot of guys my age or our age starting companies. There are now, but there weren't. And a lot of the guys who were in there, not old guys, just guys who are literally 5-6 years older than me, that's not their natural language. They didn't grow up with a computer. They got it later. They're having to go back and figure out, you know, what's a Facebook, that sort of thing. So I think it's been huge for my companies. But also I've had to be very careful, because you could, in this day and age, have a really awesome business on Facebook that in reality is just awful, you know, doesn't have a product to back it up. So I don't want to rabbit trail too much on the social media question, but they've been very integral in building it for us and getting our name out there. I think there are lots of ways that you can use it. You just have to pick one or pick a route and stick with it so that it's on brand. So, like, you know, we'll just take Yeti. Yeti has an awesome social media presence. It's definitely on brand all the time. And like, if they just took a cell phone and got on their Instagram and did an Instagram story of someone like walking around Yeti headquarters, which is one of the coolest buildings I've ever been in, and just started showing random people like, hey, meet so-and-so, it would be like really off brand, right? Mm-hmm. It would be like, man, we've never seen this on yet. Now people might go nuts and like, I would love it, but a lot of people would be like, what in the world is this? And it wouldn't feel right. And but like, you know, I take our Instagram story, not that we're anywhere close to as big as Yeti, but I take our Instagram story and just like walk around the kennels, you know, and like, hey, here's so-and-so dog. I did it today. So you just need to pick a path. Are you going to be really organic and let people see behind the scenes? Is your presence on social media going to be 100% like super professional, all, you know, pro photos that are high quality DSLR on brand? You know, it just, you have to kind of pick a route that you're going to take that, you know, with and stick with it on the way. That's probably the most important thing. I don't think there's necessarily rules to that. There are just some general guidelines that you need to kind of stay within, whichever route you're going to take.
So the one thing that has also come about with social media is the trolls and the people that just want to throw shade and be disruptive. And, you know, the thing that I find very interesting about social media, and it's kind of representative of our culture, and I've said this before within the group and some other places, but, you know, the only thing that our society loves to do more than build people up is to tear them down. So people will fall all over themselves to follow people on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and, you know, all that, like their stuff or whatever. If you give them a mention or a whatever, they'll like repost it like crazy. And, you know, it's awesome. I mean, it's truly one of the, you know, it's kind of broken down that wall of engagement where, you know, I think about it like, you know, when I was a kid, if my family took me to a baseball game and I got like close enough to a player to have him sign the baseball, that was like the highlight of my lifetime. Mm-hmm. Now it's like a kid, the same highlight for him is getting like, you know, Aaron Judge to like retweet him or like give him a happy birthday tweet or something, you know, whatever. It's just a different perspective. But what that also allows, you know, the things to have, what happens is, you know, people have access to, you know, to the person to be disruptive or be negative and prod them. And you see, certain athletes will like lash out and, snap at somebody. And now I'm sure you probably see some of that to some extent as well. But how do you go about dealing with, people like that, and maybe kind of add on as a two-part question almost. The other thing that's kind of indicative of our industry is that people sort of latch onto their favorite brands and their favorite this or their favorite training style or whatever it is, and are starkly against the way you do it. I know e-collars is a big one that comes up a lot, and you field a lot of like conflicting, competitive, questions about techniques and positions on that. So I'm just curious, sort of, I know that's a massive question I just asked, but I'm sort of curious as to your take on those sort of aspects of the social media piece.
Yeah. Again, you have to decide ahead of time, like what are you going to do? How are you going to handle it? And I've changed a little bit about that. I'm probably not the best person to ask, because I can definitely like go on a tangent on someone on social media, which is not usually helpful. My wife is like, one day you're going to listen to me. But, early on in my business in Southern Oak, and in Cornerstone too, I would be friends with people who would, be further along than I am on the journey of whatever business they're doing, specifically in the Gundog world. And I would just notice people talking trash about them. And several of them would say like, yeah, just wait, whenever you're successful, it'll happen. I remember thinking they had to do something wrong. And then realizing a lot of it literally just came from pure jealousy, or like you said, just some cultural trend to like just jump into the cult of bashing on social media. And, we've managed to avoid a lot of that, but we've definitely had our fair share of it. And for the most part, you just have to ignore it, man. You'll dominate your whole life. When, for instance, when Sitka did the Say Win video and posted it on their Instagram and their Facebook, there was not a lot of negative talk. For the most part, it was, in fact, that some of the guys that run their social at CCAT mentioned, like, man, this one didn't get nearly as much of the trolling as some of our videos do, but there still was some, and I could have occupied days going in and like responding to people. But you're not going to change people's mind. And the best thing that you could do is ignore it, keep doing what you're doing. If it is valuable criticism, then, chew up the meat and spit out the bones sort of thing. Consider the source. Are they a person who has the authority to speak into this topic? If so, what have they said that's true? What have they said that's not true? Take what's true. See if you can apply it to what you're doing. Take what's not true and just forget about it. Don't let it get you down, because there's a lot of people who do support what you're doing. And so, yeah, we've sort of taken that approach. Now, there are some interesting things, I'm small enough, and we're small enough that I will respond to people who are just trolling, and some bigger companies have done that successfully. Like Wendy's is the best. Wendy's will straight up troll people. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's so fun to read. I'll get sucked down a rabbit hole of reading Wendy's, tweets, and it's so fun. But I can definitely get into that. Like someone leaves a comment, and like on a Cornerstone video the other day, and they were like, everything was great except the music. The music sucked. And I'm just like, why take time out of your day, to go and comment this? So I'll like leave a smart aleck comment back. And I don't think that's probably the best way to do it, but it is fun sometimes. And most of the time people will say like, oh, I didn't really mean to be a troll. Sorry. Some people will double down and be rude, but right. I don't know. It's like people want to pull the words back into their fingers off the keyboard and, take it away. But that's the problem with the internet. Once it's out there, you can't take it away. So yeah, it can be difficult to deal with. And there are certain subjects that even on here, you asked me a question about, e-collars, and we're not like the anti-e-collar person. I just don't think it's not my favorite way to train. I think there are fun ways to train without one. And I think that's a dangerous thing to introduce to your average Joe who might have a temper. So, even that subject though, or force fetch, or what, British labs versus American labs, that one wears me out. And people can get extremely hostile, and there's a lot that goes into that, to be honest. that we don't have time to get into on a podcast, but there's a lot of just realizing that most of the people who are going off on things like that on the internet have a very low emotional intelligence, very low EQ, or they wouldn't be going off like that. Just, straight up social vomit of the keyboard. And when you engage with someone who has a low emotional intelligence, it's not going to go well. My dad would always say, arguing with folks like that is like mud wrestling with a pig. You're both going to get really muddy, but only the pig likes it. Right, and for me, it's, that's been, and he would also say, my dad would always say, and stuff like that came up on the internet, he would text me, I don't know, it's like Confucius say or whatever it is. He would talk like that, and he would just say, Confucius say, he who stirs shit pot must lick spoon. Stuff like that. Like, just don't do it. Don't get on there and do it. And you all know those people who just stir it up. So yeah, man, I have my own ways of dealing with it. And honestly, I know we'll hit home with a lot of listeners here, and I'm not calling anyone out, personally, but we've all seen people, and I'm sure people have seen me fail at responding to social media, whatever it is, who are business owners or somewhere high up in a business. And, it's just ugly. It's ugly when you see that. And my encouragement to anyone would be just, rise above that mess. Try not to do it. Try to at least be professional, because no matter what you do on there, someone's going to screenshot it and it's going to come back later on. There's no escaping it.
Yeah, I really think, anyone that's trying to build your business in the industry or whatever you're doing, I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. You can go on, if you're trying to buy something for your wife and, you get on her Facebook and there's going to be negative comments about it. So, stick to your business plan. And I'm telling you from firsthand experience, if you know what your goals are, and the goal of this podcast is to, teach people and bridge the gap between new hunters and veteran hunters. So when I remind myself of that, and, we have a very active Facebook group. So if something goes on in there, I'm to the point where I just delete it and it doesn't even bother me anymore. Cause I don't, I was getting to the point, and, Josh had to bring me back down to earth a few times, but I was getting to the point where I'd come home just in a bad mood. And, I wouldn't talk to my wife, or I wouldn't want to play with the kids or whatever it was. And I'm like, I don't, that person should have no effect on my life. Like, I'm not there for them, and they can have, whatever thought that they want to have and put it out there, whatever, it's gone now. Like, I just don't even, like you said, it's better just ignore it, not deal with it, and move on.
You can't wear it. You can't wear it. It's and you can't give those people so much as to actually take control of your emotions, or your time. Really, your time's very valuable. There's only so much of it being made. And, when you give a lot of it to those sort of things, then it's, you don't get it back.
Yeah. And one of the things that kind of keeps coming up for me is when we first started, we were terrified to release that first episode, right? It was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to sound like? We're going to sound like idiots. And we did a practice episode, and we were like, oh, our voices sound like crap and all this stuff. And it was just we finally had to come to the realization is that no matter how successful we are, there will be people that have something negative to say. There will always be those people. So if your fear of starting your business or going after something you're passionate about is worrying about what other people are going to say or what they're going to think, that's going to be a hurdle that you're going to have to get over sooner or later. So it's easier and better to get over that earlier and put yourself out there, because it's almost like when you think about doing a project at your house, right? It's you can hire someone to do that project for you, but they're not going to care for your house or your project like you would care for it. Because because at the end of the day, they go home back to their, and they go on to the next job. You're still living in that house, and you got to wake up tomorrow and you got to look at it. And you got to be comfortable with it. And if it's something that's not done right, you have to fix it, right? So I look at I look at our show and I look at business in general, much in that same mindset. It's like, at the end of the day, no one out there cares about this show more than Dan and I. So
sure,
when someone says something to us negatively about us, or someone says negatively to you about your kennel or your videos, you have two choices, right? You can let that eat you up, or you can say, I'm going to turn the page and I'm going to move on. Tomorrow is another day, and we're going to keep working towards what, why we started this in the first place, and continue to build it to the best that you can. Because I mean, I'm sure, your businesses have been very, very successful. Obviously, we're huge fans of what you have going on and the shows that the Cornerstone platform and all the things that you've been involved with. But I'm sure you get days where people say things to you and you're like, I can't win for trying. It's like,
Sure.
There will always
Yeah.
be someone to find something that's unhappy with what you're trying to do.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a great perspective, and honestly, it's part of personal growth for me. In some ways, I have never cared a whole lot about what people thought of me. At least as a kid growing up, teenager, as a part of like a punk rock crowd, but even being part of a punk rock crowd, even the way you say that, or I said it, I was still part of a crowd. There's still like people who are like your people, right? And
Right.
when they say something, then you're like, oh man, it's like devastating, And then there are other people who are just terrified of the opinions of others. And for me, it's been personal growth issue. It's been something I've worked on with a buddy of mine who's a life coach of mine, which is even weird to say. I got to a point in my life where all of this was so busy that I literally had to hire a life coach, which has been probably I would say before that happened, I'd be like, that's super lame. But now I would say that's like the best thing I've done. But like when dealing with emotional intelligence again, and like personal growth, being a better version of whoever you are, part of that is the ability to take feedback. And we live in a culture where feedback is not given properly and not received properly. Instead of just like having a conversation with customer service, people just spit off online. Right.
Right.
And then as business owners, instead of like receiving the feedback, I mean, I recently went through a situation with Southern Oak where I had to ask my whole team for some feedback on a decision that we were making, and the feedback wasn't what I expected it to be. And I handled it very poorly at first. I was literally like, are all you people idiots? Like, is no one seeing this? But I had to backtrack and apologize to all my team and say, I'm sorry, I didn't see your perspective, and let's move forward, and we kind of can get tunnel vision. And again,
So
you
let
eat the meat and chew
Let
the
me ask
meat
you a
and spit out
question
the
about
bones.
that.
That's the big thing.
Not to interrupt you, but I'm curious how you handle that, because things like that come along the way. And, how do you handle a situation when you ask for feedback, and obviously you shouldn't ask the question if you don't want to hear the responses. So you hear them, they're not what you think. So what happens when you come to a situation where you have to make a decision? You feel like one direction's the best way to go. The team's giving you feedback that's maybe contrary to that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your business, right? It's at the end of the day, it's your show. But knowing how everyone else feels about that, how do you go about navigating that and making the right decision for what's best for the kennel?
Yeah, the better you do that, the better of a business owner you are. It's hard, man. It's hard.
Right.
So with Southern Oak, at the end of the day, I have my team, which are like some of the best dudes on earth. Brad Robertson's kind of first on the team, and then I've got Don and Wally at SOK North, Alex at Outpost at Bracken Creek, Corey Wages at the Outpost at Tanglefoot Trail, now Parish Major at SOK East. All these dudes are super experienced and qualified, not just in Gundog training, but in other realms outside of the Gundog world. I mean, we've got orthopedic PA, an attorney, VP of a bank, like guys who have really like done it.
Wasn't one guy a quarterback for the Packers for a long time?
Yeah, he's literally like 2 doors away from me right now in my lot, living here right now. So yes, so successful football, and thankfully has a loud voice because de-cheating dogs this week has required it. But it's this group of guys that, but at the same time, I had to sit down. I sat down with my wife, and I was like, we're making the decision. We will announce very soon another outpost that we're expanding to, which everyone is excited about, but like the way we went about it was in question. And we all wound up on the same page through some great, helpful conversation from everyone. And I was able to hear some of that input once I came off my high horse. And I did say, like, at the end of the day, with Southern Oak, I'm driving the bus, and you're either on the bus or you can get off the bus, right? But I've brought these guys on my team because I trust them. I have people message me all the time like, hey, can we be an outpost? Hey, can we, open up a Southern Oak Kennels at our house and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you're great at what you do, but like the guys who are running these outposts are not guys who called me an asset. They're guys who are my friends who I saw doing what they were already doing. And I said, man, you should be a part of what we're doing. And they're like, absolutely. It all happened organically. And, part of growing up for me as a business owner has been learning to say, all right, man, I thought I was good at receiving your feedback and I thought we were all aligned. And apparently from this conversation, I was wrong. And I owe you guys an apology. Let me hear it. Let me hear your thoughts. Please hear my thoughts in response. And man, honestly, guys, and this is getting out of the realm of just outdoor industry and into the realm of just being better as not just entrepreneurs, but just like people. Honestly, a big thing for me in the last year has been trying to develop listening skills. A huge part of that has been putting my freaking phone down, like setting a goal. There was a time a few months ago where I was averaging 7.5 hours a day of screen time. When Apple came out with that screen time thing where it started telling you your screen time, I was like, Apple, I'm done with you. I'm about to go get an Android that won't tell me this. Like, I don't want to know. And so I've cut that down. I'm below 5 hours, about 4.5 hours a day average now. So I've cut it almost in half. For me, a huge part of improving is I realized as a human being, I was listening to people in order to respond. So when people were talking to me, I was already thinking of my response. And that's a really like narcissistic way to live. And through life coaching, through my friend Rory, he really opened my eyes to see, the best way to listen to people is as if whatever they're about to tell you should and can change your life. And when I adopted that, and I'm still working on it for sure, but like when I adopted that into my life, then it became like, okay, I'm getting some real feedback from people on my company. Maybe it's just junk, but I'm going to listen to it like it's not. I'm going to hear it, evaluate it, and not immediately be coming up with my quick response. And that's been a huge, listening to people in that way will go a long way. So yeah, that's some unsolicited advice on life that you guys definitely didn't ask.
No, but listening, I've been listening to Andy Frisella a lot lately, the MF CEO project. And he speaks to that a lot because there's so many times, he runs First Form and he has like all these other businesses and just, multi-millionaire. And he said the exact same thing. He said, if you aren't listening, then you're missing half the conversation and you're just trying to respond and put your thoughts into other people's minds when you should be hearing what they have to say. And that's a huge part of running a business and being the boss. So I think that's a great point that you made.
Yeah, you got to be able to hear.
Yeah, and I think to that end, I know we're getting kind of long here, and I don't want to drag this out too much longer. But I would kind of like to maybe do a little round robin, amongst the three of us, because as you were talking about your experience with some of the other outposts and kind of navigating that, it got me thinking about something that Dan and I established early on in our business, and it made me think like maybe we can get out on this with just like each of us giving sort of one recommendation or sort of like kind of tip for success that has been helpful for you or for us in Dan and I's case individually, that kind of thing. And for us, one of the most important things was, and I this resonated with me when what you were talking about, because Dan and I have been friends for a really long time, and we've been friends way before HP and all that kind of stuff. And I knew when we decided to go into business together that we needed to be able to communicate effectively with each other without risking our friendship. Like, you know, HP and the success of this business is not worth what him and I have built our entire lives as far as our friendship. And I didn't want it to become something that, you know, would divide us ultimately because of something's dumb. So we made an agreement very early on that we would both be openly candid with each other to the point, even if it was hard to hear. And what I mean by that is, you know, I don't want to speak for Dan, but I'll speak for me, and he can vouch for this. Like, I hate using the term alpha. I really do. But I have an alpha type personality. Like, I say what I feel like. I'm forthright, and I don't hold back. I don't really have that gene that well. So I told him I need to have the freedom to do that when I feel that we're either doing something great or poorly or whatever. If I don't like it or you don't like it, like, we need to be able to do that back and forth, and we both need to be able to agree that we have the freedom to do that and to listen to each other when we do it. And nothing that we ever say is personal. It's all framed under the prospects of we want our business to be successful. And because we established that from literally day one, it's worked very well for us. So I don't have the fear of picking up the phone and be like, dude, I'm unhappy about the way we're approaching this, or hey, we're getting stale here. We need to like try something different. Like, you know, we've always had that open line of communication, and, you know, our friendship, in fact, I feel like is stronger because of that today than it was probably before HP started. So, you know, I think that was a really critical step in our business process. And it was one that fortunately enough, we were able to get out of the way very, very early on. So I would encourage people to think about who you're going to be going to in business with. If, you know, if that's your situation, if you're going to be partnering with people, or if you're going to be working with like a distributor or, you know, something like that, make sure that the personalities and the, you know, the way that you're going to work together is established and works for you. Because if it doesn't work for you, it has to be a two-way street, right? It has to work for both, you know, both people involved. So Dan could have been like, hey, I'm not comfortable with that, man. Like, you know, we would have had to reevaluate at that point. But, you know, having that out of the way early was super beneficial for us. And I would definitely encourage anybody that's going into a partnership to kind of think about your personality, know who you are, know how you operate, and sort of ensure that the other person is comfortable with sort of how that your relationship is going to mesh.
Yeah, I would say that I totally agree on that. You know, what they say is never go into business with friends or family, right? So that is because you can easily ruin relationships, or, you know, family dinners at Christmas or whatever it may be. But I think that has been the most instrumental part of us, like you said, getting stronger as friends and growing like we have. And that it is sometimes, you know, I don't like that. And it's out in the open. It's like, all right, well, what do you think we should change? What do you want to do? And it's helpful, because a lot of the times I'll be like, man, I thought we were on the right course there, but I see your position, and that is a much better way to go. So it's definitely having that out there. I think if we're doing a round robin, I would probably say, you know, if you're going to have the haters on social media and everything like that. And it's something that I started doing way back in high school and football, but, you know, put in the extra work when people don't see it, and don't tell people your plans. You know, if you're, and you know, I'd get done with football practice and I would go and lift, and I'd go run like 4 miles. No one would see that extra work, and then we'd go and crush it on a football field. And it'd be like, oh, you're lucky, whatever it is. Well, you know what? You prepare for that luck, right? So don't tell people your business plans. Get out there and just get after it, and essentially don't let people get in your way.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's hard to keep it to like 1 or 2 bits of advice if we're doing a round robin, especially on this particular topic. But some things that I've heard that have been very impactful for me. So I'll say like a negative thing. One of the costliest things to entrepreneurship is a bad hire. And I don't want to get too personal, but I've experienced this for myself, and it's cost me, you know, from a financial standpoint, more than I care to share. From a personal standpoint, probably just as much. And man, I was at lunch today with a guy who's president of a huge bank, and He was like, I mean, vice president of a huge bank, number 2 guy, and big job, lots of responsibility. And we were talking about a situation. He was like, hire slowly and fire quickly. And I was like, man, I don't know if I agree with that, but I wish I had known that, and my uncle, when I went through this, difficult situation with Southern Oak, my uncle was the one that just said to me, he's a business owner, entrepreneur. And he said, you never hire someone that you can't fire. Well, that's a weird thing to live by when you are partnering with somebody. So hiring somebody, I have like Howl. Most people on the internet know Howl. Howl's my kennel manager. He works here. He's an employee, he's hired, and he's hilarious. He's not going anywhere anytime soon, I hope. Even if he does, end the workday with no shirt on, drinking a Coors Light, smoking a cigarette, spraying a kennel out. That's part of the Southern Oak Kennel experience. But like partners, like Keith and Josh, or like my guys, like Corey Wages, who has Tanglefoot Trail. Corey's literally one of my best friends in the world. And it could definitely get to the point with Southern Oak, like you guys were talking about, where it was like, man, this is costing us a friendship. So if you're going to do that, you have to have those preemptive conversations where you say, hey, look, like you guys talked about, we're not going to allow this to happen. If it goes down this road, here's the sort of eject button so that we save our friendship, because the relationship is not worth the business. So yeah, it's definitely important to put those things in line. I'll say when it comes to partnerships, what really helps is clearly defining roles from the onset and making sure everybody stays in their lane. So I think what happens is people will bring on, partners that are like them. Like, hey, that guy's like me. I really, because we tend to like people who are like us, because if we're totally honest, we don't like anyone as much as we like ourselves. So we like people that are like us. You want to bring in somebody that's like you, and sure, there are differences, but ultimately we like people. We like to surround ourselves with people who are like us. And when you don't define the lanes, then you get in a situation. This almost happened with Cornerstone, where you have 2 guys trying to do the same thing, and one of them is better than the other, or you have a guy doing something, wondering why the other guy's not doing it, and you just can develop some frustrations that are underlying and can become, dangerous. And so one of the greatest things that happened for us at Cornerstone was we just had this big sit down with all of Rock House, Keith, Josh, myself, where we just said, hey, we need to define roles here very clearly. And man, that's the moment from Cornerstone where I can go back and I can say, from right here forward, we have crushed it. Like, I don't sound as conceited to say that as about Cornerstone, because it's definitely a partnership and it's definitely not 100% dependent on me. But like, Cornerstone has been just crushing it with these guys, with our team, more than I ever thought it would, to be honest. And it started when we were like, okay, you're in this lane, you're in this lane, you're in this lane. And we all realized we're driving down the same highway, headed that same direction. And when we define those roles as partners, man, it was because then you can encourage one another. Like, hey, you're doing a great job in your lane. How can I help you with your job? Not by doing it, but like, how can I do my job better so that you have a better time doing your job? And I think that's how lasting partnerships, can form. I think when you form partnerships with your friend and you don't define roles, then it can become very, very difficult.
Yeah, for sure. And I can totally understand what you're saying about, the roles being clearly defined, because people deal with that every day in their jobs, right? It's like, well, why isn't so-and-so like doing this? Like, what does he do all day? Like all the, people experience that all the time. And when you bring it into like a closer knit group of friends, that becomes even more pressure. It's like, well, how do I approach him? Like, how do I say something to him? So then like, it's easy to start like kind of talking around the person, and a lot of stuff can really fall apart. You hit one person up and be like, hey, why isn't so-and-so like doing this? Or why is he doing that? And it can really unravel really quickly. So that, that's awesome that you guys were able to get that squared away. And I think, as we've mentioned, proof is in the pudding with Cornerstone and such a quality product. And
I was going to add, I saw one saying today. It said the deadliest saying in any business is, "This is the way we've always done it." And knowing your like you said, knowing your lane, knowing how you want to grow your business and the way that everything is evolving in the world, social media, whatever it is, electronics, whatever it is, being able to identify those changes that need to be made and making them are vital. So
yeah, that's key. I know we're getting close on time. I'll end it with this. Part of my conversation yesterday with a buddy of mine was, they said something, I was actually talking, there's one person in particular who's involved with some stuff that we do, who's part of Cornerstone, whose job is to call other kennels and like kind of chat about like being an affiliate. We're just kind of testing out some stuff, right? And part of that job is to call people who are directly competitors of Southern Oak Kennels. So that person has learned very quickly, like, those people typically like don't like me. So they watch the first video, they see me and they're like, F that dude, it's Southern Oak Kennels, and like off they go, And so they've gotten an earful multiple times about stuff. And it's the crazy thing is, like, 10 times plus this person's been told things that like they absolutely know for 100% fact are not true about me, from like being at my house and spending time here and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, in that conversation, I was like, you're at the point where no one's going to catch you. And I said, that's a really dangerous way to think. I can't think that way, because I'm sure there are other people who've gone before me with Gundog Kennels, right, who have said, look where we are. No one's going to catch us. And I think that's why some of the older guys don't like me, especially from a social media standpoint. And we're not the biggest kennel out there, and I won't say we're the best kennel. We have lots of growing to do and lots of learning to do, and I always want to be better. Like, we can improve on so many things, and we're working on that. But I think when you get complacent and you say, well, this is just how we do it, and what really made me realize that, guys, was I would have people call me and they would say, well, I got my first dog from my Z kennel, whatever that is, and I'm calling you, I want to get another dog. And my first question that popped into my mind was, well, why didn't they call XYZ? Why didn't they call the first guy? And so I've tried to build Southern Oak, someone a dog. I want to sell them the Southern Oak experience so that their kids and their grandkids are buying dogs from us. I don't want to just one and done, rip them off, or just be a quick sale, I want to treat business in such a way that they're a lifelong customer. And, I think that's a better way to approach things. Constantly adapt and constantly say, you don't want to get in the mindset where you're like, oh yeah, and you guys could have done that too. Yeah. We're the only waterfowl podcast. How long are you guys the only waterfowl podcast out there? It was a long time. Definitely a long time.
Quite a while.
And then immediately there's 4,000 of them. Yep. Right?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, complacency is a killer. And that's why, Dan will tell you, 100%. Like, that's one of my major things. I'm like, we have to be forward leaning. And, we got a big jump out in front of a lot of people. But, you've seen those trajectory charts. There is no such thing as staying the same. Tomorrow you will either get better or you will get worse. You will not stay the same, because everyone else is trying to do the same thing you're doing. So complacency is a killer. And if you want to be in business, you better have that competitive streak in you, because the second you let your foot off the gas, there is someone to take your place 100% of the time. So, it's just the nature of the beast. I mean, it's like everybody wants a similar thing. And, like we talked about before, we're not doing anything proprietary right now, right? I mean, the only thing proprietary on this show is the voice coming out of my head and Dan's head. Everything else is, everybody could do the exact same thing if you want to. So, for us, just like you're talking about, our challenge is to connect with the people. You sell dogs, you provide a service, but you're connecting with people at the end of the day, and it's that connection that's going to bring them back to you for their next dog and for their for their daughter's dog, and that's the one what's going to bring people back to these episodes that we've done where, okay, it's time to take my kid out in the field and I want to go listen to that episode again, or okay, I'm thinking about buying a puppy, or I'm going to bring my puppy home. Let me go back and check that episode out again. Those kinds of things. That personal connection is the difference a lot of times. So yeah, I mean, it's not easy too. It's always work, because everyone is entitled to a bad day, right? But someone's first interaction with you might be on your worst day, and you got to figure out a way to put that aside, pack that away, and you know, and treat those people fairly and like you would want to be treated as if it was your first time going to a business and that kind of thing. And it's hard to do day in and day out. I'm sure, you know, we don't do this full time. You know, when you're doing that full time, I mean, you know, you probably live that more than anybody. It's like, even on your roughest days, like, you know, you got to deal with customer issues or whatever the case might be. You know, those don't take a day off when you're not feeling well or you just don't want to be bothered, right? It's like those calls are coming regardless.
Yep, 100%.
I'll tell you one quote that has stuck with me since we were out at FowCo, Barton, was from Aaron Seafritz, and he said, "Treat every day as if it's opening day."
Yeah, and those guys live by that motto too. Trust me, I was back out there like a solid 7 times. They live by it, man. They live by it.
7 opening days. That's amazing.
That's it. It was.
Well, you know, I think we've had a great conversation. I think we could probably go much longer on this topic and really dive into some things. But ultimately, we wanted to kind of just talk about, you know, some of the high level things that go into owning your own business, starting your own business, specifically within the waterfowl and outdoor industry, and sort of some of the challenges and things that come along with that. And, you know, I think probably the goal of this is hopefully there's people out here listening that do want to start their own business and they consider some of these things when they're making that decision. I know, you know, Barton, you've said you get this question all the time, people wanting to know how you got started and how you got into it. And we've certainly had a ton of people asking us, you know, hey, I want to start a podcast or whatever. And, you know, we've obviously helped you to help out people and all that kind of stuff. But hopefully this episode will give someone a place to start. And, you know, if other questions come out from this, you know, certainly happy to field those as well. But, you know, as always, man, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your support of our show. And we were glad to have you on to talk about this. And, you know, I think it'll definitely help a lot of people.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you guys for having me. It is always fun. Always wish we could do it more, but I'm excited to be on again. Excited for the next time already.
Absolutely. And you got the summit coming up. We're excited to see that. You got a lot of cool stuff planned for that. So we'll definitely be following on social and keeping up with that. So until we
did you get Mark a boot horn yet?
Dude, I can't even talk about the summit. It's dominating too much of my life already right now. I'm very excited, and I'm also very excited for a Monday after the summit. There you go.
So much inside baseball from Dan. Anyway. All right, Barton. Thanks, man. We appreciate it, and we'll catch you again soon.
Likewise, guys.
All right. Well, hopefully everyone enjoyed our conversation with Barton and took a little bit away from that. So if you're looking to start a business this year, you know, hopefully that gave you a good start or maybe answer some questions that you might have had. Obviously, if you've got others or you think we might be able to be a sounding board for you, feel free to reach out to us, and we're more than happy to help out to the extent that we can. All right, Dan, you got anything else? Maybe one last thing this week before we wrap it up?
No, I think I'm probably just going to go ice my tongue and go to bed. It's been one of those weeks. I'm exhausted, and it's only Wednesday night, so
yeah.
I don't know. I got to get with it.
All right. Well, on that note, let's go ahead and get out of here. But before we do, want to just take a minute to thank Cornerstone Gundog Academy, the world's most comprehensive online gun dog training resource. They've got over 160 instructional videos, including everything you need to take your 7-week-old puppy to a finished gun dog. Visit cornerstoneGundogAcademy.com and sign up for their free preview module and begin your training journey today. Cornerstone Gundog Academy, the world's most advanced gun dog training resource on the web. Also, thank you to Lifetime Decoys, Gunner Kennels, and Eukanuba. Head over to the HP Outdoors website, check out all of our partners on our list there, and also enjoy the discount codes that are offered under our discount codes tab. So I think that's it. I'm not even going to give Dan an opportunity for one more, so we'll get out on that. All right, that does it for episode 128. Hopefully you enjoyed our discussion on entrepreneurship in the outdoor industry. And if you're considering starting a business, maybe that gave you the motivation to finally make this year the year that it happens. If you're new to the show, head over to iTunes, check out our past episodes, leave us 5-star ratings and reviews. It helps other hunters just like you find our show. That's going to do it for this week. Dan's going to ice his tongue. I'm going to go hang out. So until next week, for Dan, I'm Josh. Take care.